Admiral Kethvar had seen many impossible things in his 3 centuries commanding the hegemony's 3rd Expeditionary Fleet. He had watched stars die, witnessed the birth of new worlds, and led campaigns against species that defied the natural order. But nothing had prepared him for what hung before them now. Silhouetted against the orange glow of Charybdis 7, the supermassive black hole that had swallowed entire solar systems. A ship, a human ship. Confirmed sensor readings, Kethvar commanded, his 4 eyes fixed on the tactical display. The bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, hummed with nervous energy. Around him, his crew of various species worked with practiced efficiency, but he could smell their fear, a mixture of pheromones and biochemical signals that spoke of deep, primal terror. Confirmed Admiral, reported his science officer, a tall, crystalline being whose voice chimed like broken glass. Mass signature indicates a Dreadnought-class vessel. Length approximately 12 kilometers. The design, it matches human architectural patterns from the archives. That's impossible. The words came from Commander Zexhai, his tactical officer. Nothing can survive crossing the event horizon. The hegemony's best physicists proved it mathematically. Matter gets stretched, torn apart at the quantum level. It's called spaghettification. Kethvar's mandibles clicked in agreement. For the past 50 years, the Galactic Council had been systematically destroying human colonies, viewing them as nothing more than an infestation to be cleansed. Humanity had fought back initially, their primitive ships no match for the Council's advanced technology. The last major human fleet had been driven into this very system, desperate and broken, seeking refuge near the black hole where no sane species would follow. That had been 5 years ago. The Council had written them off as dead, victims of their own desperation. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission," announced a communications officer. On screen. The view screen shimmered, then resolved into an image that made Kethvar's blood run cold. A human face stared back at them, pale skin, dark hair, and those unsettling binocular eyes that seemed to look right through him. But it was the expression that froze his hearts. The human was smiling, not the grimace of madness or desperation they had expected from survivors, but a calm, confident smile that spoke of secrets and power. The human's uniform was pristine, as if he had just stepped from parade ground rather than emerged from the impossible depths of a black hole. "Greetings, Admiral Kethvar," the human said, his voice carrying easily across the void. "I am Captain Marcus Chen of the UES Prometheus. I believe you've been looking for us." The casual use of his name, spoken with such certainty, sent chills down Kethvar's spine. "How do you know who I am? How are you even alive?" "Our calculations showed that any ship entering Charybdis 7's event horizon would be destroyed instantly." Captain Chen's smile widened. "Your calculations were based on conventional physics. We stopped being conventional the moment you started hunting us like animals." On the tactical display, more contact began appearing. Ships emerging from the black hole's accretion disk, their hulls gleaming despite the impossible journey they had undertaken. Dozens of them, then hundreds. The sensor readings made no sense. Each vessel showed signs of modification, enhancement, technologies that shouldn't exist. "This is a trick," Zexhai hissed. "Some kind of holographic deception." "I assure you, we're quite real," Chen said, apparently hearing every word despite their secure communications. "Would you like a demonstration?" Before Kethvar could respond, one of the human ships, a vessel that couldn't have been more than a kilometer long, fired a single beam of energy. It struck an asteroid in the distance, a chunk of rock the size of a small moon. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the asteroid simply ceased to exist, not exploded or vaporized, but gone as if it had never been. The bridge fell silent except for the steady hum of life support systems. 5 years, Admiral, Chen continued, his voice taking on a harder edge while maintaining that terrifying smile. 5 years we've been beyond the event horizon, learning things your science said were impossible. Do you know what happens to humans when you take away everything we love, everything we've built, and drive us into a place where we should die? Kethvar found his voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. "What?" "We adapt. We evolve. We become something new." The captain's eyes seemed to burn with an inner light. "And then we come back to settle accounts." The human fleet continued emerging from the black hole, their impossible shapes defying everything the Council knew about physics and engineering. Kethvar's flagship, pride of the Hegemony's Third Fleet, suddenly felt very small and very fragile. "Now then, Admiral," Captain Chen said, leaning back in his command chair, "shall we discuss terms for your surrender?" Surrender? The word tasted bitter in Kethvar's mouth. In 3 centuries of service, no enemy had ever dared suggest such a thing to a Hegemony fleet commander. "You're outnumbered 10-1, human. My fleet carries enough firepower to crack planets." Chen's smile never wavered. "Numbers are a funny thing, Admiral. They mean very little when you're operating under the wrong assumptions." He gestured, and the view screen split, showing tactical readouts that made Kethvar's blood freeze. "Your ships are powered by antimatter reactors, correct? Highly efficient, but they do have certain vulnerabilities." Without warning, half of Kethvar's fleet went dark. Not destroyed, not damaged, simply powered down as if their reactors had been switched off by an invisible hand. The bridge erupted in chaos as damage control teams reported the same impossible thing across dozens of ships. Complete power failure with no identifiable cause. "How?" Zexhide demanded, his weapon system flickering back online only to die again moments later. "You spent 5 years assuming we were dead," Chen replied. "We spent 5 years learning to rewrite the rules. Did you know that consciousness can survive spaghettification if you modify it correctly? That time dilates differently when you're partially phased into higher dimensions? That the information paradox isn't a paradox at all, it's a doorway." The science officer's crystalline form began to resonate with stress harmonics. "That's impossible. The mathematics don't support." "Your mathematics," Chen interrupted, "limited by your dimensional perspective. When you're dying inside a black hole, you either expand your understanding or cease to exist. We chose expansion." Through the view screen, Kethvar watched as more human ships continued emerging from Charybdis 7. But these vessels weren't just appearing. They were changing, shifting, their hull configurations flowing like liquid metal. Some grew larger as he watched, others split into multiple vessels, and a few seemed to phase in and out of visible reality entirely. "We learned to think in 11 dimensions while you stayed trapped in 3, Chen continued. "We discover that matter and energy are just different expressions of information, that consciousness can exist independently of biological substrate, and that the universe has far more room for impossibility than your council ever imagined." A new voice crackled across the communications channel, Kethvar's own fleet communications. One of his ship captains, terror clear in his voice. "Admiral, our quantum computers are reporting massive data intrusion. Someone's accessing our navigation systems, our weapon protocols, our—" The transmission cut off abruptly. "We've been in your network since the moment you arrived," Chen explained casually. "Your encryption is based on prime number factorization. Quaint, but trivial to crack when you can process calculations across multiple dimensional matrices simultaneously." Kethvar felt the walls closing in around him. This wasn't a battle, it was an execution. But he was a fleet commander, trained never to yield. Even if everything you claim is true, you're still human, still biological, still mortal. We are the Hegemony. We have ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. And in all that time, you never encountered a species that could evolve fast enough to surprise you. Chen's expression grew colder, though the smile remained. "Let me show you what 5 years of concentrated evolution can produce." The view screen shifted to show the interior of the human ship. What Kethvar saw there defied every assumption he'd made about human physiology. The crew moved with inhuman precision, their eyes glowing with the same inner light as their captains. But it was their integration with their ship that truly shocked him, interfaces that seemed to grow directly from their flesh, neural connections that pulsed with visible data streams, and modifications that blurred the line between biology and technology. "We call it symbiotic enhancement," Chen explained. "Human ingenuity merged with technologies we discovered in the quantum foam near the event horizon. We're not just the same species that you drove to extinction. We're what humanity becomes when you push us beyond the breaking point." One of the enhanced humans turned toward the view screen, and Kethvar gasped. The being's face was still recognizably human, but its eyes had been replaced with complex optical sensors, and neural ports dotted its skull like crown jewels. When it smiled, its teeth were made of some crystalline material that seemed to bend light. "Meet Dr. Sarah Okafor," Chen said. "She was a xenobiologist before you destroyed her research station on Kepler 442b. Now she's something else entirely. Sarah, would you care to demonstrate our new understanding of biological systems?" Dr. Okafor nodded and placed a hand on what appeared to be a standard control panel. Immediately, Kefar felt something wrong happening throughout his ship. His crew began reporting impossible readings, atmospheric processes creating oxygen from vacuum, gravity generators producing localized time distortions, and most disturbing of all, biological systems beginning to change. "What have you done?" Kefar roared. "We're offering your crews a choice," Chen replied. "Evolution or extinction. The same choice you offered us 5 years ago." Throughout the Hegemony fleet, crew members were beginning to change. Their cellular structures were being rewritten in real time, enhanced with technologies that transformed them from the inside out. Some welcomed the transformation, while others fought against it with decreasing success. "This is biological warfare," Zexhai accused, even as his own exoskeleton began to shimmer with new patterns. "This is survival," Chen corrected. "The weak adapt or die. The strong become stronger. It's the most natural law in the universe, and we've simply learned to apply it more efficiently than anyone before us." Kethvar watched his fleet falling apart around him, not through destruction but through transformation. His carefully ordered military hierarchy was dissolving as his crews underwent changes that he couldn't begin to understand, let alone control. And through it all, Captain Chen continued smiling. "Stop this." Kethvar commanded, his voice breaking with desperation. Around him, his own bridge crew was transforming. His navigation officer's multiple arms were becoming more efficient, her movements faster and more precise as new neural pathways established themselves. His communication specialist vocal cords were restructuring, allowing him to process and transmit data across previously impossible frequency ranges. "We're not forcing anyone," Chen replied, his voice now coming from speakers throughout the ship as if he were physically present. "We're simply offering enhancement. Your crews are choosing to accept it because deep down, they understand that the old ways are ending." The tactical display showed a sight that would have been unthinkable hours earlier. Ships from Kephar's own fleet were breaking formation, not fleeing but moving to join the human vessels. Their transponder code were changing, their weapon signatures shifting as their crews underwent the same transformation process. "You're stealing my fleet," Kethvar accused. "We're liberating your people," Chen corrected. "From limitations, from the rigid hierarchies that kept them bound to outdated thinking, from the fear that prevented them from reaching their true potential." Commander Zexhai approached Kethvar, but he moved differently now. His exoskeleton had taken on a metallic sheen, and his eyes glowed with the same inner light as a human's. "Admiral," he said, his voice carrying new harmonics, "you need to see this." Before Kethvar could respond, data flooded his mind directly, not through his ship's communication system, but through neural pathways he hadn't known he possessed. The information was overwhelming. Star charts showing systems beyond the galactic rim, technologies that could reshape matter at a quantum level, and most shocking of all, the true history of humanity's relationship with the Council. "You lied to us," Kethvar whispered, the revelation hitting him like a physical blow. Humanity wasn't a primitive species. They were refugees. From the Andromeda Galaxy, Chen confirmed, fleeing something that makes the Hegemony's worst nightmares look like childhood phase. "We came to the Milky Way seeking sanctuary, willing to start over with nothing but stone tools if necessary. And you responded by trying to wipe us out because we didn't fit your carefully ordered hierarchy." The data stream continued, showing Kethvar images that rewrote everything he thought he knew. Humans weren't the barbaric species the Council had portrayed them as. They were survivors of a conflict so devastating it had consumed an entire galaxy. They had deliberately abandoned their advanced technology, choosing to live simply rather than risk recreating the weapons that had destroyed their home. The Devourers, Dr. Okafor's voice whispered through the ship's communication system. That's what destroyed Andromeda. Self-replicating entities that consumed matter, energy, even information itself. Humanity fought them for 10,000 years before admitting defeat and fleeing to this galaxy. And we brought nothing with us except our knowledge, Chen added. Knowledge we swore never to use again, because the last time we did, it nearly destroyed everything we held dear. Kefvar felt his worldview crumbling. Then why reveal it now? Why become the very thing you fled from? Because you gave us no choice. Chen's smile finally faded, replaced by an expression of profound sadness. For 50 years, we kept our word. We lived simply, farmed primitive worlds, raised families, and pretended we were nothing more than another emerging species. We could have rebuilt our technology at any time, could have reclaimed our position as one of the galaxy's dominant powers, but we chose peace instead. The view screen shifted to show recordings from the human colonies, not the military installations the Council had claimed to destroy, but farming communities, research stations focused on agriculture and medicine, schools where human children learned alongside other species. All of it burning under the Council's systematic extermination campaign. "You hunted our children," Dr. Okafor said, her enhanced voice carrying harmonics of grief and rage. "Burned our schools. Destroyed our hospitals. You didn't just wage war against us. You committed genocide against a people who had voluntarily disarmed ourselves and chose to start over. We defended ourselves as long as we could with primitive weapons," Chen continued. "Lost battle after battle, watched our colonies fall, so our people died by the billions. And in the end, when the last of our fleets was broken and scattered, we had a choice, die with our principles intact, or remember who we used to be. So you chose to become monsters," Kefvar said. "We chose to become what we needed to be," Chen corrected. "The thing about knowledge, Admiral, is that once you have it, you can't unknow it. You can suppress it, hide from it, pretend it doesn't exist, but it's always there waiting. And when survival is at stake, principles become luxuries you can't afford." Through the ship sensors, Kefvar watched as more human vessels emerged from the black hole. But these new ships were different, older, more advanced, built with technologies that predated their exile to this galaxy. The true human fleet, hidden away in the one place no sane species would look for them. "How many?" he whispered. "Enough," Chen replied. "We had 5 years inside the event horizon to rebuild, to remember, to become what we once were. Time moves differently near a black hole, Admiral. What seemed like years to you were centuries for us. Centuries to grieve, to rage, and ultimately to decide that mercy is a luxury we can no longer afford." The enhanced members of Kefvar's crew were now working alongside human technicians, their movements synchronized in ways that spoke of shared consciousness. They were no longer his crew. They belonged to something larger now, something that transcended species boundaries. "This is just the beginning," Dr. Okafor announced, her words echoing through every ship in the system. "Every world that participated in the genocide will be visited. Every leader who authorized the slaughter will answer for their crimes. And every species that stood by and watched while we burn will learn what it means to face humanity's true potential." "You're talking about conquering the galaxy," Kefvar realized. "You're talking about conquering the galaxy," Kefvar realized. "We're talking about justice," Chen corrected. "And justice, Admiral, has been a very long time coming." The transformation of Kefvar's fleet was complete within hours. Ships that had served the hegemony for decades now bore the marks of human enhancement, hull modifications that bent light around them, weapon systems that operated on principles as science officers couldn't begin to explain, and crew complements that had transcended their original species limitations. But it was a psychological change that disturbed Kefvar most. His former subordinates looked at him with a mixture of pity and disappointment, as if he were a child clinging to outdated toys while the adults discussed serious matters. "You're making a mistake," he told Chen during their next communication. The human captain appeared more solid now, as if he were actually standing on Kefvar's bridge rather than projecting from across space. "The Council will not allow this. They'll mobilize every fleet, call in favors from 1,000 species. You may have superior technology, but you're still vastly outnumbered." "Are we?" Chen asked. The view screen expanded to show a galactic map dotted with thousands of points of light. Each marker represents a human settlement that was destroyed during your genocide campaign. Mining colonies, research outposts, farming communities, trading stations. Do you know what they all had in common? Admiral. Kethvar stared at the display, a cold certainty growing in his chest. What? They all had black holes nearby. Convenient places to hide, to wait, to remember. We didn't just flee to Charybdis 7, Admiral. We fled to every dark corner of the galaxy where your ships feared to follow. And in each of those places, we've been preparing. The map changed, showing new signals emerging from the marked locations. Human fleets, each one carrying the same impossible technologies, the same enhanced crews, the same burning desire for justice. The scale was staggering, not hundreds of ships but millions, emerging from hiding places throughout the galaxy. 50 billion humans died in your campaign, Dr. Okafor's voice whispered through the ship's systems. But 10 billion escaped to the dark places between stars. 10 billion people with nothing left to lose and access to technologies that make your most advanced weapons look like stone axes. The Council will unite against you, Kethvar insisted, though his voice lacked conviction. Species that have been enemies for millennia will put aside their differences to face this threat. Will they? Chen smiled again, but this expression held no warmth at all. Let me show you what's happening in the core worlds right now. The display shifted to show scenes from across hegemony space. On Kepler Prime, the Council's capital world, chaos reigned as enhanced humans materialized directly in the government chambers. They moved like ghosts, passing through security barriers as if they didn't exist, their weapons targeting not flesh but the neural pathways that control thought itself. We learned so much in those 5 years, Chen explained as they watched council members surrender without firing a shot. How consciousness interfaces with quantum fields, how information can be weaponized, how fear spreads through civilizations faster than any plague. Your leaders aren't being killed, Admiral, they are being educated. On world after world, the pattern repeated. Human forces appeared from nowhere, moved through defenses like they were illusions, and left behind populations that had been fundamentally changed. Not conquered but converted, their minds open to new possibilities their species had never imagined. You're rewriting their brains, Kethvar accused. We're removing artificial limitations, Dr. Okafor corrected. For millennia, the Council maintained order by convincing species they were inferior to their potential. We're simply showing them what they could become without those mental chains. The enhanced members of Kethvar's crew nodded in agreement. They moved with a confidence he'd never seen in them before, as if they had been sleeping their entire lives and only now awakened to their true capabilities. This isn't conquest, Chen continued. It's evolution, the natural progression from a galaxy ruled by fear and hierarchy to one governed by cooperation and shared advancement. We're not destroying the Council civilization, we're upgrading it. And those who refuse the upgrade... Kethvar asked. Chen's expression grew cold. Are given the same choice you gave our children on Kepler 442b. Adapt or become extinct. A new voice interrupted their conversation. Admiral Thexvor, commander of the 2nd Hegemony Fleet, broadcasting on emergency channels. All ships, fall back to defensive positions around the core worlds. The humans have technologies beyond our understanding. Do not engage directly. Repeat, do not. The transmission cut off abruptly, replaced by screams and the sound of tearing metal. Admiral Thexvor was always too aggressive, Chen commented. He chose to fight rather than listen. His crew, however, has proven more adaptable. The tactical display showed what remained of the 2nd Fleet. Ships that had been completely rebuilt in the span of minutes, their hulls flowing like liquid as human enhancement technologies reshaped them at a molecular level. Where once there had been 200 hegemony vessels, now there were 200 human hybrid ships, their crews transformed and their loyalty redirected. How many more fleets do you think will choose to fight? Dr. Okafor asked. How many more commanders will sacrifice their crews' lives for the sake of a hierarchy that never truly served anyone except those at the top? Kethvar felt the weight of inevitability settling on his shoulders. Around him, his bridge crew worked with inhuman efficiency, their enhanced capabilities allowing them to process information and coordinate actions in ways that made their previous limitations seem almost comical. You've already won, he realized. We won the moment you forced us to remember who we were, Chen agreed. The rest is just cleanup. The question now, Admiral, is what role you want to play in what comes next. Will you be a relic of the old galaxy, clinging to power structures that no longer have meaning? Or will you help us build something better? Through the ship's enhanced sensors, Kethvar could feel the changes spreading across the galaxy like ripples in a vast pond. Species that had never cooperated were suddenly working together, their artificial barriers dissolved by technologies that revealed a fundamental unity underlying all conscious life. What about the Devourers? He asked suddenly. If they destroyed Andromeda, what happens when they follow you here? Chen's smile returned, but this time it held genuine warmth. They are already here, Admiral. They arrived 3 years ago, probing our dimensional barriers, testing our defenses. Why do you think we accelerated our timeline? The galaxy faces a threat that makes your worst nightmares seem trivial, and only a united civilization stands any chance of survival. Then this was never about revenge, Kethvar whispered. Then this was never about revenge, Kethvar whispered. Revenge was just a catalyst, Dr. Okafor confirmed. Unity is the goal. And now, Admiral, you have a choice to make. The choice, when it came, was simpler than Kethvar had expected. He could feel the Devourers now, pressing against the edges of reality like a cancer seeking entry into healthy tissue. Through his enhanced crew's shared consciousness, he glimpsed fragments of their true nature, entities that existed between dimensions, consuming not just matter and energy but the very concept of existence itself. How long do we have? He asked. Chen's expression was grim. The dimensional barriers will fail within 10 years. Maybe less, depending on how aggressively they probe our defenses. When that happens, everything in this galaxy, every world, every species, every thought and dream and possibility will be devoured unless we're ready. The view screen now showed the true scope of humanity's preparation. Hidden fleets weren't just emerging from black holes throughout the galaxy. They were emerging from parallel dimensions, alternate timelines, and realities where the human exodus from Andromeda had taken different paths. The mathematics was staggering. Billions of ships crewed by versions of humanity that had spent the last 50,000 years preparing for this moment. You've been planning this since before you even arrived in our galaxy, Kethvar realized. We've been planning this since the moment Andromeda fell. Dr. Okafor confirmed. Every human settlement you destroyed, every colony you burned, every family you murdered, they all knew they were sacrificing themselves to sell the illusion that we were weak, primitive, defenseless. Their deaths bought us the time we needed to position our true forces. The enhanced members of Kethvar's crew were now fully integrated into humanity's collective consciousness, their thoughts and experiences adding to a vast pool of knowledge that spanned multiple galaxies and timelines. Through them, Kethvar could sense the approaching storm, a tide of absolute negation that would sweep through the Milky Way like wildfire through dry grass. The Council never stood a chance, he said. The Council was never the enemy, Chen replied. They were just another obstacle to overcome. The real war begins when the barriers fall and the Devourers pour through. Everything we've done, the technology, the enhancements, the forced evolution of your civilizations, it's all preparation for a conflict that will determine whether consciousness itself survives in this corner of the universe. Through the ship's sensors, Kethvar watched as the transformation of galactic civilization accelerated. Worlds that had been enemies for millennia were now sharing technologies, their populations enhanced and unified in purpose. The rigid hierarchies of the Council had been replaced by fluid networks of cooperation, species working together in ways that would have been unthinkable just days earlier. Show me, Kethvar said suddenly. Show me what we're really fighting. The view screen shifted, displaying images from Andromeda's final days. Kethvar watched in horror as entire star systems simply ceased to exist, not destroyed but negated, the matter and energy converted into something that wasn't quite emptiness. It was the absence of the possibility of existence itself. They don't just kill, Dr. Okafor explained. They unmake. Every photon of light, every quantum of energy, every bit of information, consumed and converted into their own expansion. When they are finished with the galaxy, it doesn't become empty space. It becomes a void where space itself cannot exist. How do you fight something like that? With everything we have and everything we can become, Chen answered. The enhancement technologies we've been sharing, the consciousness networks we've been building, the dimensional manipulation we've mastered, it's all designed for one purpose, to create a civilization so unified, so advanced, so fundamentally interconnected that even the Devourers can't unmake it. Kethvar felt the truth of it resonating through the ship's enhanced systems. His crew wasn't just working together anymore. They were thinking together, processing information at speeds that made their previous capabilities seem glacial. And they were connected to billions of other minds across the galaxy, all working toward the same goal. The irony, he said softly, is that you needed us to try to destroy you. Without the genocide campaign, you never would have had justification for forced evolution on this scale. The Council served its purpose, Chen agreed, though I doubt they would appreciate knowing that their greatest victory was actually our greatest strategic success. Every human colony they destroyed gave us another black hole to hide in, another opportunity to prepare, another motivation to ensure our species' survival. The transformation was accelerating now, spreading beyond the enhanced crews to encompass entire planetary populations. Kethvar could feel his own consciousness beginning to expand, his thoughts merging with a vast network of minds that humanity had woven throughout the galaxy. It should have been terrifying, this loss of individual identity, but instead it felt like awakening from a dream he hadn't realized he was trapped in. "Will we still be ourselves when this is over?" he asked. "You will be more than you ever imagined you could be," Dr. Okafor replied. "The individual consciousness doesn't dissipate. It becomes part of something greater while retaining its unique perspective and experiences. Think of it as a symphony where every instrument contributes its distinct voice to create something more beautiful than any could achieve alone." Through the network, Kethvar sensed the approaching moment when the dimensional barriers would fail. He could feel the Devourers testing, probing, searching for weaknesses in reality's fabric. But he could also feel the galaxy's response. Billions of enhanced minds working in perfect coordination, technologies beyond imagination being deployed, and weapons that operated on principles that redefined the very concept of warfare being brought to bear. "When they come," Chen said, his smile returning with genuine warmth, "they'll find something they've never encountered before. Not just another galaxy to consume, but a civilization that transcends their ability to unmake. We've learned to exist in dimensions they can't reach, to process information they can't intercept, to be more than the sum of our physical components." The view screen now showed the galaxy as it truly was, not a collection of separate worlds and species, but a unified organism of consciousness and technology, ready to defend the very concept of existence against entities that sought to reduce everything to nothing. "Welcome to humanity's true legacy, Admiral," Dr. Okafor said as Kethvar felt his consciousness fully merge with the galactic network. "Welcome to the war for the right to exist." In the distance, the dimensional barriers shimmered and began to fail. The Devourers were coming. But for the first time in 50,000 years, humanity was ready for them. And they were no longer alone. Chat controls sounded for smart.